Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. So in this video, we're going to really quickly get into how to properly make an oval. More specifically, I'm working on an oval planisher for some work that I'm doing currently on a very ornate custom hammer for a client and for future jobs. So as I stated in a previous video that I'll link to somewhere here in the cards and also down in the description down below, where I did a lot of forging of different pieces at the end of the video for these chasing tools. At the end of the video, I spoke briefly about how I'm making just smaller versions of a much larger piece. So the sizes on this isn't necessarily an issue. If you don't want to make it this small, you make bigger stuff, make smaller stuff. But the process, the key thing here is the process is absolutely the same. So without further ado, I've got some coil spring here. This is some 5160, some coil spring. We are going to throw it in the fire, get it hot, and I'm going to show you how to take this and turn it into a really small oval planishing tool. So thanks for joining me. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first step in this process, we've already got this coil spring. It's already round, but we need to draw it out. So we're going to keep it flat on the anvil. And we're just going to keep hammering straight down with full face hammer blows. You want to turn it every other hit or so. And that's going to take us down to a nice long taper. That's the key here. We want to have a nice long taper. Now once it starts turning black like it is now, you need to reheat it. So we'll go ahead and reheat that real quick. As that's heating up, we make sure our scale is clean. The cleaner the surface of the anvil is, the cleaner your work will be. Same thing, you want a hammer face that'll match the surface of your anvil, so therefore it's very clean across both surfaces. That's kind of critical to doing good work, doing good iron work at the anvil. So we've got this hot again. Bring it out. We're almost to size and dimension now. Just gonna keep making it. Again, I've already got larger oval planishing tools, so I don't really need this to be quite small. So I'm gonna draw that out just a bit more. When you're working with tool steel for planishers and other stuff, you want to give it time to rest in between heats. So, let it go in, let it heat up, take its time. Don't try to push too much at once. Don't try to just get this thing forged out into the end result all in one go. Give it some rest. Let it heat back up, come back out, forge a little more, heat back up, come back out, forge a little bit more. It'll be less prone to cracking that way later on, or have excessive, excessive stress fractures or anything like that. So again, I'm going to forge this in down a little smaller than what it'll ultimately get ground out to be. And now, just like any taper, we're going to round it up by knocking off the corners. And then we're going to knock off the flats that you see there, corners. So now that's cold enough, need to quit hitting it. It cools off quick. I still got a little bit of a heat in this piece every time. It doesn't look like it on the camera because of the way I've got the settings set up, but I still have just a little bit of heat left in that piece, even though it looks dark on the camera. So now we're going to come in and we're going to take off all those little corners. Sweep the anvil, and now we're going to round this up. The rounder you make this, let me be clear, the rounder you make this, the cleaner this is, the better your oval is going to be. So it's very crucial that you make the effort, to go through the effort to really clean this up. If you can't clean it up with hammer blows because you're not that accurate just yet, go ahead and take the time to let this cool down and sand it smooth. a nice conical, nice round and smooth is what you need. So if you can't do it with the hand hammer, it'll be valuable to do that. But it's worth taking all the prep work up front, doing all the prep work up front to make it right. All right. I'm just rounding it now. I'm progressing out towards the end of the tip as I go to round this right on up, make it nice and clean. This is too cold now. You need to stop hitting it. And so that's where I'll stop, and I'll go ahead and brush it. Again, nice and clean. The shank of this tool for what I'm doing is not critical that it be perfectly smooth. So, but if you're making a drift, you want this to be perfectly smooth. It really does help reduce friction. Now that we have that end done, I'm going to go ahead and back draw a taper or hammer in a taper for the struck end. This helps centralize everything in the piece so that the kinetic energy will run through the piece dead center. So just by putting a little taper on the struck end, one, it helps if there's any sort of mushrooming that you can counteract that with grinding and stuff. But the most important part is it lines up that balance through the center of the struck tool, which is very critical to do. Nice steep angle. You don't have to get fancy with this end of the tool. Get as fancy as you feel. The point is, the shape we're looking for is what I like to call that doobie shape. So there we go. Heat this back up. I got a little bit of a bend in that while hammering on this, so I'll heat that back up. Give that a quick little straighten, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, we've got this piece nice and hot. We're going to lay it on the anvil as flat as we can get that taper to lay on the anvil, and then we're going to come down with nice guided hammer blows, and we're just going to hammer on one side of this piece. Then all the way back up the shank. We want this tool to sit flat in the 2 dimensions we're working with here. Now, I know it'll be very tempting for you. It'll be very tempting for you at this point to try to turn it and do any sort of straightening in this direction with your regular hand hammer. Do not do that. If you need any straightening or course correction, use a wooden mallet to do whatever straightening in that direction that you need. Again, the point of this is to have a nice oval, not have a square. So that's kind of the key there. So you can see the flats progressing up both sides. I will heat this back up, and we'll take one more tiny little heat on this to smooth out any lumps and bumps we have. Really nice and warm. Again, we want to set it flush on the anvil, and we just want to establish that flat even more and make sure it's there. Nice calculated overlapping hammer blows. Now you'll see we're picking up a bit of an arc. Hopefully you can see that. You guys see how that arc is starting. We'll get one more little heat, and I'll show you how we'll fix that with the wood block, the wood mallet here. Hopefully this will help if I can get this straightened up. Again, it's really important that you straighten this thing with a wood mallet and not a hand hammer, because if you use the hand hammer on the radiuses, you're going to be sadly mistaken. This is going to be a real sore point for you. So there we go. Now we've got this piece a lot more straightened. Okay, so here we are at the vise. We've got our piece all locked up here in the vise, and as you can see, it's pretty darn small. So I may have to adjust the camera here in a minute so you can see a lot better, but it's gonna have to stay this way in order for me to file it. So I'm just using a flat bastard file made by Nicholson. It's just a, again, it has that double cut file there, profile. It's a really nice medium grade file this is. This is an 8-inch. What would they call an 8-inch file, well, 6-inch file actually, and it's a pretty good grade of file to use. So the smaller the files get, usually the less coarse they are, just as a general rule. So all we're going to do is we're going to just come right across this piece, flat like, and you're going to see that oval start taking place. If you've done a good job of forging, this will go really rapidly and you won't have to do too much dressing up of the actual profile. So as I said before, I forged it out longer than what I need it, so this way I can file it back to where I want it to be. I'm working from both sides a little bit. I've also got this tilted at a slight angle, so hopefully you guys can see how that's progressing a little bit. So there we go. We got it nice and flat all the way across, a good flat profile. Now I'm going to go once around the outside, very lightly around the outside to kind of true this up, take any of the little burrs off, and then the rest is actually going to be done with a bit of sandpaper. So I'm actually going to use a bit of 240 grit sandpaper, slightly used, and that's how I'm going to put the radiuses in on this piece. I'm just going to work it over the piece in this direction. That's going to give it its curvatures in that direction. And then I'm going to straighten this up here, just a little more height, and then we're going to work it in this opposite direction. That's going to give it its radiuses in that direction. It doesn't take a lot when you're working on something this small. And after it's done, after this is heat treated, we'll go back through, this will go back through and get cleaned up. I'm not going to show the heat treating process in this video. I have covered that in other videos around chasing tools in the past. I've got an entire playlist on that. So, be sure to check that out. That'll be linked up in the description down below. I suggest you go check that out if you want to have that sort of information. So here we are. Hopefully you guys can see that oval. Again, it doesn't take a lot of time once you've done all the work at the anvil. That's kind of the key there. Doing a lot of your work at the anvil will really save you a lot of time when it comes here to all the little cleanup work. But that is how you properly make an oval shaped planishing tool, or any sort of oval for making drifts or things like that. Now we'll go ahead and clean up this backside. I'll show you guys that as well. All we're doing is just cleaning up that face, the hammer face, the area that's going to be struck, the struck end, just where it's nice and flush. It's nice and flush. Taking off any of the sharper corners with the file. If you got a belt sander, that's pretty quick to just pop it on the belt sander real quick and give it a go. Give it a few minutes on a belt sander. It'll be just as quick. But if you don't have a belt sander, hand work on these just works just fine. So again, I'm just going to polish that face up to where it's a dome, nice and domed. So it'll take our little hammer blows there. So there we have it. There's your little oval faced planishing tool. Now this still needs to be heat treated, and then after heat treatment, we've already done all the file work or the main profiling shapes, so the only thing that we would have to do then is just sand this off to get a nice buffed or polished in, depending on the work that you're undertaking. I'll show you real quick the hammer that we're working on. This is a hammer for a client that I'm working on currently. It's going to have some high relief chasing in this and engraving. And you see there's the clean sides. I'm going all the way around on it here. But that's what this little planishing tool is for. This little tool here, this little oval shaped planishing tool, is meant to take and get in here and act as a handheld fuller to be able to fuller out the lobes of these, you know, acanthus leaf scrolls here. And it's the same thing on this side. This will allow me to get into all these little small tricky areas that I didn't have previously the access to get the little cups and swirls and things like that. Everything that you see in this background here, the backdrop that's blackened out, is actually going to be removed. So this will stand out prominence out front, which is, you know, key to selling this whole look and giving it some sculpting and things like that. So anyways, if you want to see this hammer in its completion, you should follow me over on Instagram. I do update photos on my clients' work and things over there on Instagram on occasion. And this is one that I've created a little series over there. So if you haven't followed me on Instagram yet, you may want to do that for some of the kind of behind the scenes work on stuff like this. And then obviously subscribe on YouTube here if you want to see more work and helpful tutorials and details like this. Again, we have just getting now on to almost 1,400 videos, or maybe this might be a little over 1,400 videos here on YouTube to help you out as a blacksmith. So that's it for today. God bless you. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.